This is Morning Express. It is now time for the newsroom. The time is 5 minutes after 7. Just a quick reminder, you're welcome to participate. I'll be reading your comments and your views as we get to the end of this particular session of Morning Express. The Twitter handle is at KTN News, or you can tweet me directly, and that's at Michael G. Gitonga. I'll introduce the panel this morning. To my extreme left, we have Crispus Yankem, who is communications expert, and thank you for joining us this morning. Karibu sana.
Thanks, Michael.
Next to him, we have Patrick Gadara, who is also a communications consultant and a cartoonist.
Thank you.
Karibu.
Asante.
Last but not least, we have Clay Uganda, who is an editor with The Standard. Karibu sana.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. It's been a very eventful week, I must say, between Wednesday and today. And let's start off, first of all, with our neighboring country here in Uganda, with the elections taking place, and just your thoughts on the coverage and the information that we're having coming. I'll start with you, Gadara.
I thought the coverage itself, at least of the election day and what happened afterwards, was pretty comprehensive. I think there could have been more, obviously, in the run-up to the elections. I know we had the debates shown on TV, but I think a better articulation of the issues would have been excellent. Going forward, after the election, I think the media did pretty well in articulating the problems that were there. What I found lacking was the linkage back to the problems we have here. Because it was curious to me that lots of people would be talking about the need for reform of the Ugandan electoral system, but not recognizing that many of the same problems ail our own electoral system, and we also have an election in next year, basically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, Crispus.
Thank you, Michael. And I must begin by saying that it's always a pleasure to join you on this forum.
Thank you.
Diplomat,
okay. If you say so. But again, I want to say that for far too long, I think democracy in Uganda has been on trial. And courtesy of the last election, I think it was buried, it was killed and finally buried. We've seen the shenanigans that actually surrounded the election itself. I don't know whether it was an election or it was a one-man show, because we had already said that we know the outcome of the election itself. So it was kind of a predetermined thing, because when you look at it, even what was trending on Twitter, it was Museveni, it was Yoweri, it was Kaguta actually leading. And that is very unfortunate. But having said that, I think I totally agree with what the media did prior to the election and on the election itself and after that. But I think I want to agree also with Gadara this time round, because there were a lot of things that would have been done as far as that election is concerned. One of them was actually to bring in alternative voices, because looking at the coverage itself, it was about Museveni this, Besigye that, Amama Mbabazi that. If it wasn't about Museveni ranting, it was about Besigye being arrested, it was about him being locked up. Where is the church in that country? These are the critical questions that we must ask. And coming back to the country, what are the possible lessons that IEBC can draw from that election? And like what Gadara said, we need now to take the story forward by looking at certain reforms that are critical as we move forward.
But in terms of the actual elections with Besigye, Amama Mbabazi, and Museveni, weren't they the newsmakers? Really, we're just reporting who is where and who's doing what.
But you see, that is actually the folly of the media, because the media decides who makes the news. So by doing that, you end up locking other voices. For instance, I spoke to a clergy from that country, and he was part of the Observer mission. And the things that he was raising as far as that process is concerned was critical. And these are the voices that I'm talking about. Then the other thing, it was very unfortunate, and I must say that Kenya should be ashamed for having associated itself with the election of that country. As a country, I think we need to be ashamed to be associated with the election of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni.
I guess you're referring to the president's congratulatory message.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me prosecute my thought. What I'm saying is, we know that even the AU chairperson the Canadian president, Idris Deby, hasn't spoken about it. We've seen the only congratulatory message coming from our very own president, and it wasn't formal. I think it was a Twitter message. So what does it say? These are the things that we need to be asking. Two, I agree with the media, the way it covered, but I totally disagree with the media when they started running scrolls saying that breaking news, indicating that Museveni had won. This was a predetermined outcome. Even
so what would you have had them report, that Museveni has lost?
Well, I'm saying,
or are we to say that he has stolen votes?
Not stolen as such. There wasn't anything breaking about that story. At this time, I think it is important for us to redefine what really constitutes
what is breaking news. Okay. Yes. Clay, quite a lot there from Crispus in terms of his view of the reportage. Your take on it?
I think the Kenyan media did well out of a bad situation, because yes, as everybody knew that Museveni was going to win, but on the beat of the breaking news, yes, it was breaking news because that is the Electoral Commission.
That was the latest.
That was the latest from the Electoral Commission. As it comes to light, that Kenya should learn from Uganda. Actually, I think no, we should not learn from the worst. You know, we are bad enough. We should not learn from the worst, because what are we there? What is there to be learned? What can we learn from Uganda?
Maybe we can learn what not to do. Maybe we can learn what not to do.
If you think about it, when you have a situation where you've got an electoral commission that is essentially incredible, nobody believes it, because even on the day of the poll, you had the chairman of the electoral commission saying that he wished he hadn't cleared one of the candidates. You know, which is ridiculous. No, but my point is, we also have a very compromised electoral commission here. The IEBC is suffering not just from the failures of the last election, which have yet to be corrected. I've not seen again the media going after what went wrong, you know, but also we've seen them engrossed in corruption issues. Now we've got Chicken Gate, etc. You know, my question is, in 2017, will we be in the same position where we've got an electoral commission that nobody believes can actually carry out a credible election?
That's a question, actually, yes, we need to ask ourselves that. But the only examples we can draw from Uganda is what not to do or how not to hold an election. Yeah, I think that's the most we can learn from them. But they're not best practices that we can learn from.
I don't think anybody suggests what we do.
I don't know much about.
I think learning can be positive and negative, and in this case, there's nothing. Well, what we are learning is what not to do and how not to hold elections.
How not to do it.
And some of the things
but I think the coverage overall, I mean, like for the Kenyan media, I mean, we really tried, because I know probably we did not go so deep as you say, alternative voices and all that, but we really tried in as much as drawing some examples, you know, as in the first thing is that a few years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, when Museveni was going for his 9th term, I don't know, this was his 10th. Okay, so fifth year, when he was going for the other terms, the coverage was not as elaborate as it was this time. So when it comes to covering local elections or other elections for regional countries, I think.
I mean, there has definitely been an improvement. We saw the same in the Tanzanian election, where guys were sent ahead of time and were able to file stories forward. I don't think it happened, at least with that much of.
I think actually, like KTN did so very well, because even yesterday, the Daily Show, the clip that they used to disparage, to lampoon Ugandan elections, actually was a clip from KTN News. Yeah, that's the one they used.
Right. So I think as a local media, we did our best to give regional news of what was happening. But Gadar, I would be interested to hear in terms of what Crispus was mentioning as breaking news. Was there any other?
Of course, yes, it was breaking news.
It is breaking in the sense that the announcement is being made now.
At that particular moment, it's being declared,
whatever it is,
but I think what Crispus.
But what Crispus, I think, and I think, if I may. I think what Crispus is alluding to is the idea that the media presented this as an actual competitive election. And we had all these tallies coming in, etc., when it seemed very clear that this was...
it was almost a given.
Yeah, it was a given. But that said, actually, if you looked at the polling that had been there before the election, it indicated that Museveni was going to win 60%. You know, so this wasn't a surprise. You know, I think, and that's where people like Besigye had pointed out that there was pre-rigging of the election, you know, in terms of access to media, in terms of harassment of candidates when they're holding rallies, being stopped, etc. You know, that was the problem. You know, on election day, I think pretty much everybody expected that Museveni would have been.
Also, another thing is when you talk about like there was not, we did not interrogate the issues very much, because what are the issues in Uganda's elections? But you see, that's also one thing. What I mean to say is, I think that's probably what we need to look at. But you see, we cannot go to Uganda and tell them about their issues, because if you ask a Ugandan journalist, what are the issues about this election? Is it corruption? Is it maybe, is it economy? What are the issues? The issues about in Ugandan election is about Museveni winning. And some of the things that probably we could have raised is like this Bambazi, it's called Bambazi, yeah? Is that about the term limits. I think he was at AG at some point.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's a guy who actually was very
he's actually one of the people who were instrumental in having the term limits removed.
Having the term limits removed. So those are some of the things probably we could have raised, you see. But you see, those are things that get lost in the quagmire that is so-called Uganda politics or Uganda elections, because Uganda politics is all about one person and his cows. You know?
But I think I would differ a bit there. I think there has been, I mean, there are issues that, as in any country, that they need to deal with. Whether it's corruption, whether the economy, oil is now a big problem for them.
There's the prices, LRA and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know. Now, my thing is, those are issues that should inform the politics, you know. But as happens here, because they are not articulated, our politics simply revolves around the personalities, you know. And this is what I'm suggesting, that in a way that, I mean, they should, our media should be covering it the same way they should be covering here, and they don't, you know. Articulate the issues, let the elections be run on the issues, what are the stands, and that's, I think that's the whole point of having debates. But we've reduced debates into these sort of sensational crowd pulling events,
attacks.
You know, yeah. But instead of actually what are the issues of the elections about? What are the visions that are being provided by Besigye, by Mbabazi, by Museveni, and how do they differ?
Okay.
Just a minute. Going forward, I think probably the issues that actually the Kenyan media could have raised and what probably could have mattered to Kenyans very much is the EAC. I mean, whoever wins, or what does this say about the EAC? I mean, the issues that Museveni wins another term, how is this going to affect, or how is it good for EAC
but also good for us, because I mean, Uganda is our largest trading partner.
Yeah, I think those are some of the issues that probably could have raised how it's going to impact on Kenya's economy and just our relations with Uganda and the other EAC members and the larger maybe Horn of How we
probably have asked about
how we are going to relate. How all these things are going to affect Kenya, because whatever happens to Uganda, I don't think that if Uganda's economy tanks, that Kenya will actually just remain stable. There will definitely be a slight change in our economy too. So I think those are some of the issues, probably the regional issues that we could have raised, instead of, as you guys say, that instead of concentrating on personalities. But this is, I tend to think that this is the minus that actually happens with Kenyan media, is that sometimes we tend to lack a world view. You see, so we look at Museveni, or we look at the personalities of Uganda, and then we forget to relate this to the larger economic bloc of the East Africa Cooperation and how actually it's going to affect us going forward politically. Because I do believe this idea of like now you can go to Uganda, just need an ID and stuff like that. And what about if what is the kind of a person that Besigye is? If he wins, what are these going to be affected? Is he the kind of a person who can roll some of these gains back, or is it actually that somebody who can spur the growth between relations between Kenya and Uganda and stuff like that, and the larger East African community?
Okay, yeah, I certainly think that